Header up.
Rob and Chris, they're on the air. Yankees, Mets, they're everywhere. From the Bronx to Queens, the diamond gleams. MLB talk, the ultimate team. MLB is the place to be. Rob and Chris with the pitch you'll see. Swinging stacks and stories fly. Baseball talk that's amplified.
And welcome to a new episode of NY MLB Talk with your hosts Rob and Chris, as we cover the Mets, Yankees, and all of Major League Baseball. And if you're watching us right now on YouTube, hit that sub button. We really appreciate that a lot. And also, if you want to follow us on Twitter/X or TikTok, hit us up at NY MLB Talk. Follow Rob at Armorosco. Follow myself at CP7NY. So, Rob, we got a special guest. He's returning to talk about his brand new book coming out. Why don't you introduce him and we get going?
Yes, we have Danny Gallagher. Now, he is a Montreal historian, and I don't think anybody in this world knows more about the Montreal Expos than Danny. He's written many books about the Expos, and he knows everything about the Expos. Danny, thanks for coming back on the show. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys having me back, guys. It's beautiful.
Yeah, the last time you were on, we had such a great time talking about the Expos, and we had a lot of great comments about that. So we wanted to bring you back. Chris is going to start us off, though. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Danny, welcome again. Thank you again for joining us. Your new book is coming out. I'm going to put it up on the screen now so everybody could check it out. It's called The Tragic Story of Willie Davis and Other Expos Vignettes. Give us a little preview of the book, like what it's about and everything.
Okay, it's got about 40 chapters on various Expos players and executives, but the main focus at the start of the book is about 6 chapters on Willie Davis, who played for the Expos in 1974, but played about 13 seasons with the Dodgers. And normally most of my books are basically one chapter on every player, but because I got talking in an exclusive interview with Willie's first wife, I got about 5 or 6 chapters out of Willie Davis talking about his ups and downs with the Dodgers and the Expos and other facets of his life. So I'm thanking his first wife for giving me a scoop, a cool an interview.
Dan, I read some parts about your book, and he was a really, really, really good ball player. He, like you said, he played 1 season for the Expos. He played 140 games. He hit 12 home runs, 89 RBIs, and he batted .295. But when he was with the Dodgers, I'll tell you, he was a speedster, and he was a really, really good hitter. But when he retired, what a tragic life.
Exactly. You see, he was a very good player in Los Angeles in high school. He didn't go to university, but the Dodgers groomed him and tutored him and really taught him how to be a player. So he was originally a right-handed hitter, but one of his scouts, Kenny Myers, thought he would be better as a left-handed hitter, so he would get quicker to first base. So they made him a left-handed hitter, but as I say in the book, why wouldn't they have just left him as a switch hitter? Continue his right-handed hitting skills and use the left-handed hitting skills, but he just played, he was a left-handed hitter in the major leagues, but he was certainly well thought of in the minor leagues. He had some great years in the minor leagues and then had some great years with the Dodgers. He had a couple of injuries when he was in 1969 that kind of curtailed his progress, but he had some drug problems along the way, and that kind of curtailed his activities in the majors. If he had not gotten into drugs, he probably would have been a much better player than he was. He was a good, solid player, but maybe not a superstar.
No, but he was a solid player, like you said. He was an all-star. I think he was a 2-time all-star. He won 3 Gold Gloves, and he also set the Dodgers record for a 31-game hitting streak. So the man could hit, but like you said, like so many other players, drugs. He got involved with drugs, and it really hurt his career. And especially when he retired. And in your book, you talk, like you said, it's 6 chapters about this. He had money problems, obviously, but he was also arrested in 1996. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, he wanted to get about $5,000 from his parents. But the parents said, no, we can't give you any money. And he took a machete and threatened to hit them if they didn't give him any money. But so that the police were called and he was arrested. And it's a sad case of him getting into trouble with the law.
Yeah, that was sad, Chris. Chris, this happens sometimes to these players. With fame, it's hard. Listen, we had 2 guys in New York who should have been Hall of Fame players. Doc and Darryl. And Darryl, they straighten themselves out, especially Darryl now. But drugs, and right now Lenny Dykstra is having problems. He just got arrested again because he was stopped with drugs. It's a problem like any other part of any other career, anything else. Baseball has its problems. But Chris, you want to ask Danny something?
He had a really good season with Montreal. Why did they end up trading him the following year?
There were problems with Willie Davis on and off the field. He had a tremendous season. He was the Expos Player of the Year in '74, but he wanted a 2-year extension of his contract. But the Expos didn't want to give it to him. So they decided to trade him to Texas. But he had problems off the field as well. He was sometimes dogging it on the field. Sometimes he wouldn't put out on the field. General manager Jim Fanning and the president John McHale got fed up with him and decided to trade him. But I would have liked to have seen him stay with the Expos for another year, and maybe he would have been just as good as he was in '74.
Danny, when you worked for the paper in Montreal, did you get to talk to Willie Davis and interview him?
No, I came there in the late '80s, so he was long gone.
Okay, so you were there.
So I just talked to his wife, first wife, and some of his teammates at Dodgers and Expos teammates to paint a picture of a guy who had his ups and downs, and I tried to paint a balanced story of him. The wife came back to me when I wrote her a postal letter in California asking if she would do an interview, and I told her I would paint a balanced picture of Willie Davis, and she really liked that thought for me, so she agreed to do an interview. So we did a bunch of interviews on the phone, and sometimes by text message. And then I talked to Willie's daughter, Kim, later on, and she's part of the book too. It's really a fabulous, up and down story about Willie.
What other players did you talk to about Willie Davis in your book?
Steve Rogers, Ty Klein, Don DeMola. Don DeMola talked about Willie's and his Buddhism. He would be chanting before games. He'd be chanting in the hotel room for several hours before every game on the road, and it was kind of sad. But yeah, there's a number of guys who I talked to get a better picture of them.
That's good. Chris, go ahead. You wanted to ask something?
You mentioned Steve Rogers. He was always a big game pitcher for the Expos. Do you have any stories about Steve Rogers that maybe some don't know about?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because right near the end of the book, in 1985, in April of 1985, he was on his his last days with the Expos. He had pitched for about 12 years or so, but he was getting down near the end of his days, and the Expos approached him about a trade to Houston, the Astros, and he had to give his approval because he was a 10-5 player, 10 years in the majors, and the last 5 with the Expos. So he approved in part a trade, but what he wanted was a 1-year extension from the Astros to go to Houston as part of any trade, and Houston was not in favor of doing that. But I talked to Steve about that trade. I talked a bit about his career. I've talked so much in many, many books about Steve Rogers because he's the heart and soul of the pitching staff from 1973 to 85. So it's always a pleasure talking to him.
I can imagine.
And we know that the Expos had so many great pitchers start out with them. The big unit, Martinez, so many great pitchers. Who was your favorite young pitcher with the Expos? Who did you like the best out of all the young pitchers that the Expos brought up? And unfortunately, they left the Expos. But who did you like the most out of that? Pedro, Randy. Who was your favorite?
I would have to say, first of all, I would say Steve is the best all-time favorite pitcher, or best pitcher because of his longevity. But I really liked, Bill Gullickson when he was young and with the Expos, and Randy Johnson. I was there when Randy Johnson pitched his first game in the major leagues in Montreal. So, he was nervous about going into that first game, and then, and then Pedro was there for Pedro in his first year of '94. So it was a pleasure really watching 2 wizards on the mound. Unfortunately, they ended up trading both of them, but Randy, part of that trade for going to Seattle for Mike Langston, and it didn't work out too good for the Expos. And then, Randy went on to a Hall of Fame career with other teams.
Well, when Randy Johnson first came up, and also Pedro, when you first seen them, was your first, your first reaction to them like, wow, these guys are going to be great pitchers, or did you think they might end up being busts? Well, what were your personal thoughts about them when you first seen them?
Yeah, the first one was Randy in '88. Yeah, he was sometimes wild, but he had great speed, and he had some control problems. But you could see that he was going to be a pretty good pitcher. It's unfortunate that he was not able to have much tenure with the Expos. He was traded in '89. So in May of '89, or in April of '89, I broke the story in the Montreal Daily News that they were talking to Seattle about the very trade that came about a month later. I was dead on. Randy for Brian Holman, Gene Harris, and Brian Holman.
Yeah,
I could see the promise that he had in '88, '89.
Yeah, it must have been tough. It must have been tough being a Montreal Expos fan and, always losing these guys. You know, the Expos as a franchise, they really had some great players. Gary Carter, Rusty Staub. I mean, there's just so many. Tim Raines, Chris, who else could you think of, Chris? I mean, there's so many.
Oh my God, there's so many great.
Dawson.
Yeah.
Andre
Dawson.
Vladimir Guerrero, Larry Walker. Yeah.
The list goes on forever with the Expos. It's a really a sad story, and I know watching the Netflix documentary, the Who Killed the Expos, it was sad because there wasn't one thing that killed the Expos. It took multiple groups or multiple people to really kill that team or to force them to move to Washington. Well, what were your thoughts? Did you watch the Who Killed the Expos Netflix documentary?
I watched the documentary, yeah. As you say, there's a lot of people and situations and financial situations that contributed to the demise of the Expos. The consortium that ran the team from 1990 to about 2001, the first consortium they sold to Jeffrey Lawyer in 1999. That group, headed by Claude Bouchou, didn't really have much money. They couldn't find a majority owner to replace the original owner, Charles Brockman. So they ended up having a group of people who put in small amounts of money, 5 to 7 million, and they just didn't have enough money for a big payroll. Not being able to have a big payroll has always stymied the Expos because they couldn't really sign that many players to long-term contracts. And then you have a number of villains like Jeffrey Lawyer, who didn't please the Expos fans that much. They traded Gary Carter after the '84 season. Yeah. I think that after that, the attendance started going down. The legacy of the Expos started going down because 79 to 84 was that great era where it was almost a mini dynasty. Even though they just got to the playoffs in '81, they had some great teams. And when they traded Carter, the attendance started going down. It wasn't the same. It was a new management group that, they decided to get rid of Steve Rogers too in 1985. So there's a number of factors for sure, Chris.
When they traded Gary Carter, of course, I was so happy that I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it when I heard that December in '84 that that the Mets traded Hubie Brooks, basically Hubie Brooks and Dan Norman for Gary Carter, and I went crazy. I was so happy about it. But on the other end, how did you take that news when you found out that the Expos traded Carter to the Mets? Did you see that coming? And how did you feel about that at that moment?
The Gary Carter was traded because the majority owner, Charles Brockman, did not want to continue paying him the remainder of his long-term contract, which would have gone to about 1989.
Yeah.
And he instructed General Manager Murray Cook to do your best to trade Gary Carter in December of 1984. And, Murray Cook said there was only several teams who had the financial clout to take Gary Carter's contract, which paid about $2 million a year. So I was a little bit shocked when he was traded, but it was Brockman who wanted him traded. So, the Expos got some decent players in Floyd Yeomans and Jimmy Brooks and Herman Whittingham and Mike Fitzgerald. They actually thought that Winningham would be a pretty good player, but he did not turn out. He became a part-time player. Hubie was a good player. Floyd Yeoman's pretty good pitcher until drugs took a hold of him in '86 and '87.
Yeah, I said Norman. I meant Winningham. You're right. My mistake. But yeah, at that time Hubie Brooks was not a bad third baseman for the Mets. But I mean, for Gary Carter, you got to make that trade, of course.
Yeah.
I have another question, if you don't mind, about Gary Carter. So Gary Carter, when he's elected to the Hall of Fame, he wants to go in as a New York Met. He made it known that he wanted to go in as a New York Met. But at that time, they weren't letting the players pick what hat they wanted to wear anymore because of Wade Boggs and whatever, if that was just a lie with the Devil Rays at the time, that they were going to pay him to wear a Devil Rays cap. How did you feel about Carter wanting to go in as a Met and not as a Montreal Expo?
I did not like that at all. The good part of his time in the major leagues was with the Expos, which was about 11 years, and he played 6 years with the Mets. 85, 86, 87, 88, 89. It was actually 5 years. So the Hall of Fame made the right decision to turn Carter down because the main focus of his career was with the Expos. So they told Gary it's not possible for you to go in with a Mets logo. Yeah,
because that's what Chris, that's what he really wanted to go in as a Met, and he was disappointed. But then he embraced it. He did. You have to give him credit for that. He was a good man. But I of course wanted him going as a New York Met. But
yeah, he was a guy who very popular with the fans. He may not have been popular with all his teammates. Never really got along with Andre Dawson. Hawk didn't really like Gary because he always wanted to be on camera and smiling and doing interviews, and Hawk was kind of the exact opposite here, very quiet and reserved, and like Warren Comedy would call Gary Carter Camera. That was his nickname, Camera. But he was certainly a great ball player, playing the dirtiest position in the game. So it was, you have to give credit to Gary for playing a pretty upbeat style of play, playing the catcher's position.
Yeah, definitely.
Go
ahead, Chris.
Danny, what is there any chance, do you think we'll see, I know everybody asks this question, the Expos back in Montreal? Do you think we'll see a team, any kind of expansion team going, to be in Montreal? Because we only hear Charlotte, we hear Nashville, Orlando, Salt Lake City, Portland. We don't hear as much, excitement about Montreal baseball. Is there going to be baseball again in Montreal?
Well, I can tell you, I'm on a committee based in Montreal called Players on Base, and that's what we've been trying to do since about September 30th of 2024, trying to get investors, but so far we have not been able to get any investors. But we're having a lot of discussions with Major League Baseball and the Olympic Stadium people and so on. But and there's some things I can't tell you because some of the stuff I'm working with in the committee are confidential. But we're hoping that we'll get some investors going in time for expansion in 2029. Now, Major League Baseball and the Players Association may have some labor problems in the next couple of years, and expansion may be delayed. There is one guy who's not really connected with our group who has said he has some investors put together to show interest in a team in Montreal. But right now, we're kind of just waiting to see if there's any sincerity in that group, and in the meantime, continue to go after potential investors.
See, I think one of the problems would be, though, Olympic Stadium. I really think that was a problem with the Expos. I really think that they would need a new stadium. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, oh, for sure. They need a new stadium. Rob Manfred told them a few years ago that if you're going to get a team, you have to have a new ballpark downtown. And while the stadium is being built downtown, I think Manfred told them, you might be able to use Olympic Stadium for 1 or 2 years, but over the long course, it has to be a new stadium. But they're not really interested in a team in Montreal. As you say, there's a number of other teams interested in Nashville, Portland, and so on, Charlotte, North Carolina. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
And Utah. But yeah, Chris, right? The Olympic Stadium is just
I mean, listen, it was bad 30 years ago, so you can imagine now about all the, how all these stadiums have been renovated, or brand new stadiums have opened up. That definitely they definitely need a new stadium. But again, I think what Danny said, the most important thing isn't try to find investors, right? It's all about the money. If someone comes in there, or if a group comes in that wants to invest in a team and a new stadium and all that, I think Montreal would have a shot, because Montreal is a great city. I was there for a short time a few years ago, and it was a beautiful city. And it would be great to see the Expos back there.
It takes about 4 billion Canadian to get a new team, about 3 billion Canadian for an expansion franchise, and maybe another billion for a new stadium.
Yeah, but I mean, the Montreal Expo fans were such passionate fans, and I feel like they just got screwed over a lot, really, because they loved their baseball in Montreal, and then the strike messed everything up too, and like you said, the owners and Loria, and it was just a big mess. But I want to ask you a question about one of my favorite all-time New York Mets, who of course was on the Montreal Expos, Rusty Staub. How important was Rusty Staub to the franchise, to Montreal?
So in 1969 to 71, he was the heart and soul of the franchise. He was Mr. Franchise. They got him from the Houston Astros, and he learned a little bit of French. He was very good in talking to the French media, trying to use his limited French. He was an excellent ball player on the field. He was one of their best hitters. And great to get along with the media, and really a franchise player in the first 3 years as franchise. And then they wanted to trade him to the Mets for Tim Foley, Mike Jorgensen, and I forget the other guy. But it turned out to be, a good trade for both the Mets and the Expos.
Listen. For the Mets especially, because in 1973, the Mets went into the postseason. They won the National League pennant, and Rusty played injured after crashing into the outfield wall. And if he was healthy, there's a good chance that the Mets would have won the World Series against the Oakland A's. But Rusty was an important part of the Mets franchise too. And he's another player that sort of people know, how big he was for the Expos, Le Grand Orange, right? Everybody knows that. But he's another player that is more known as a New York Met than an Expo. And it's like, it just seems like that happens a lot to these players who were important to the Expos, Danny.
Yeah, so he's like also a borderline Hall of Fame player. There's a lot of people who like to see him considered more, 2,700 hits. He was played for some great teams, some great batting averages, and 500 hits for 4 different teams.
Yep.
He was kind of underrated and underestimated for the Hall of Fame. But there's a lot of great players that need to be considered, and it'd be nice if Rusty was considered more.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Rusty. Chris, do you remember Rusty playing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I definitely remember Rusty Staub. But I remember him more as the pinch hitter for the Mets. You know, that's the era that I grew up, watching. And but yeah, I mean, that guy's just like you said, he's a borderline Hall of Famer. And listen, if he got in, would it be a mistake that he got in or something? No, I think he would. He's definitely worthy of going into the Hall of Fame for sure.
Yeah, and Joe Dell, I just want to say, yes, that's where he got the title in Montreal. Of course, it's French, so that's where he got the title. Yep. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead. Go on.
No, what about? Listen, I could go to a Yankee Expo. We talked a little bit about Randy Johnson. What about Tim Raines? I mean, when he was with the Expos, he was Tim Raines, right? The star, the superstar outfielder, basically the Ricky Henderson of the National League. What was some stories about Tim Raines that you could give us?
Yeah, Tim Raines from 81 to 87 was a tremendous player. He came up a wee little guy, maybe underrated and estimated. But when he got to the major league, boy, could he hit and could he run? Man, he could, a lot like Willie Davis. They're very, very fast. And Tim Raines stole a lot of bases and was a great, pretty decent defensive player and a great all-around player, a switch hitter who could hit from both sides of the plate. And you see, from 88 to 1990, those were the 3 years, guys, that I saw Raines play. And it's unfortunate that in those 3 years, his level of play went down. But and that's why he was traded to the White Sox, is because the general manager, Dave Dombrowski, thought he just wasn't playing up to his capabilities. But from 81 to 87, guys, he was like a tremendous player.
Yeah.
And, it took until the 10th and final ballot of Cooperstown to get in, but he was really worthy of going to Cooperstown because he also picked up his play with the White Sox. He won 2 World Series with the Yankees. So it turned out pretty good, and he was quite a very good candidate to be elected into Cooperstown.
Yeah, definitely a great player for sure.
Definitely. Chris, what other Yankee Expos do you want to ask Danny about?
Well, Randy, I mean, you talked about Randy Johnson. Did you see, listen, our first impressions when he comes to New York, he's pushing the news person or the cameraman away and all that. And he just didn't fit right in New York. Why do you think that happened? And did you get, or I'll say it this way. How did you see him when he first came up with the Expos? Did you have any interactions with him?
All my interactions were limited, but any interactions were good. So
yeah, hopefully not.
It was only later on when he became a star with other teams that some of these things were happening. Like, he's got a real bad temper, right? So, but he intimidating on the mound, and sometimes not that gracious with the media. But when you got how many over 300 wins, you can't count him out for the Hall of Fame. So, so what he's coming to Expos Fest Autograph Festival in Montreal this coming April. So he's coming for the first time. So everybody's excited to see Randy Johnson. He's got a rule. He will not autograph sweaters or jerseys unless 5 other signatures are already on it. Like, he's really fussy about the autograph business. But it's going to be fun to see him in Montreal.
Yeah, and I think he's mellowed a little bit since he's retired. I read an article about him with grandkids or something. Chris, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to Danny about something that happened. We were talking, me and Chris were talking about players that played for the Expos and Yankees and Expos and Mets. And here's a name of a player that did something that was extraordinary, basically. And it's Joel Youngblood. If you remember, he had 2 hits for 2 different franchises in the same day. He had a hit off of Fergie Jenkins at Wrigley Field in the afternoon, and he was traded in the middle of that game to the Expos. He flew to Philadelphia, and Montreal Expos were short a player, so he had to play, and then he got a hit off of Steve Carlton. Do you remember that, Danny?
Yeah, I talked to Joe Youngblood. It's quite a few years ago for a previous book, but he was in Chicago and found out he was traded. So he's going to do his darndest to get to Philadelphia to play for the Expos in the second game, or the next game. So he told me that he was on his way to the airport and he forgot his glove at Wrigley Field. So he had to go back to Wrigley Field, get the glove, got to the airport in Chicago in time, and flew to Philadelphia, and then he got the 2 hits on the same day against 2 Hall of Fame pitchers, which is pretty damn good. So it was quite a tale. He didn't want to come back to Montreal the next year because of the customs and all that kind of stuff. But it was quite a day for him, and getting those 2 hits on the same day for 2 different teams.
2 different teams and 2 Hall of Famers. I mean, that was, and I remember watching the Met game, and they pulled him, I think, the 3rd inning. The Mets actually tried. They wanted the trade done before that game, but there was a problem with the phone lines to Montreal. So they were having problems with the phones, I guess, at Wrigley Field, and they couldn't get the deal done until after the game started. So he got his hit off of Jenkins, and then they pulled him out. And like you said, he forgot his mitt, and the taxi cab driver had to drive him back to Wrigley. He had to get his glove, and then he flew and made it to Philadelphia. That is an amazing story.
Yep, for sure. One of the great stories in Expos history.
There you go. Joe Dell with an interesting memory about Joe Youngblood, right?
He had a Joe Youngblood placemat. I didn't even know that they would make a Joe Youngblood placemat. But
here's a story, guys, in my book. So it's, I have to think of this now. Okay, Bernie Allen was playing for the Yankees, and he was a union rep for the Yankees. So then they traded him to the Expos. So what screwed him up, he had never golfed at Pebble Beach, California, the famous golf course.
Yeah.
And the Yankees traded him to the Expos a week or 2 before they were going on a road trip to California. And he's never been to Pebble Beach. He was really upset with George Steinbrenner.
Because that is a good story. He's not the only player that was upset with Steinbrenner, right, Chris?
Yes, yeah. I'm sure there's more interesting stories with Steinbrenner when it happens to be with players and being traded. John, let me, I'm going to bring up the book again so everybody could see it. I also want to let everybody know that the QR code in the top left-hand corner takes you directly to the book, so you could pre-order it. It's up for pre-order now. We know the book is mostly about Willie Davis, but you also mentioned there were other chapters. Give us a preview of maybe some of the other chapters that are in there.
Okay, so let's see. Dale Murray, a lot of pitchers and hitter, Ty Klein, Gary Sutherland, Tim Foley. So I got a chapter on Tim Foley, the former Met.
Yeah.
Dale Murray, the great reliever. I got a chapter on Wayne Twitchell giving up the big home run to Willie Sturgill in Montreal, the longest home run at the Olympic Stadium at 535 feet.
Yeah.
And Dawson, I've got a chapter on Andre Dawson. And see, an interesting chapter is on Ricky Hill, the minor league player who never played in the major leagues, but he played in the minor leagues for the Expos. And he had physical problems that hindered his growth and hindered his progress in the minor leagues. And his story was told into a movie that came out a couple of years ago. It's called The Hill, Hill. So I talked to him. He played with Andre Dawson in the minor leagues in Lethbridge, Alberta, in Canada. So there's some interesting stuff in there about Dawson and Ricky Hill. So that's some interesting stuff. I told you about Tim Foley. Well, I also got a chapter on Tom Foley. They were both infielders, both completely different personalities. Tim Foley was a hothead.
Yep.
Tom Foley was a real nice guy.
Yeah, we know what Tim Foley did when he was on the Mets, and that's one of the reasons why they traded him.
So I have 40 chapters altogether. We're still in the editing and proofreading process, and I'm doing the index at the back of the book to kind of finalize the book. The index lists all the people who are listed in the book. I studied what their last name. And then it's going to be available at Expos Fest in April. And see, the official publication date is May the 5th. So there's still, time for people to pre-order it and order it down the road.
I want to get my pre-order in. All right. Someone asked about Bill Lee, Spaceman. What could you tell us about Bill Lee?
Bill Lee is one of the favorite players in Expos history. He played for 79 to 82 at the Expos, really colorful and outspoken and colorful. The media loved him. I've talked to him many times over the years. He's what he did after the major league. See, he was let go in 82 after Rodney Scott was let go. Bill Lee went to a bar and drank a bunch of beers, and he came back and it was too late, and the next day the Expos let him go, and he never played in the major leagues again. He thinks he was probably blackballed. But see, after that he played in minor league teams in Canada and always been a promoter, helping out at tournaments and games in Canada for fundraising. And I think that he should be in the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. Myself and a bunch of others nominated him in 2018, and so far, nothing has happened. But anyway, he should be in the Hall of Fame. I like Bill Lee. He's a tremendous person. Yeah,
and Michael Simpson says that he still plays with amateurs now, and that he's a funny guy. Listen. He was a wild player to watch. I remember Bill Lee very, very well. And he definitely was a lot of fun. He was out there. I mean, that's why he was called Spaceman. But another great player for the Expos. And there's just, the list goes on and on. And it would be great if they could get a franchise there. But my personal opinion, I don't see it happening. Danny, do you really feel that there is a chance?
I think that the odds may be against us getting a franchise, because I think that the major league owners, to be very honest, they're all based in the States. They're probably going to go with 2 teams from the United States. What's holding back, Montreal, they got some language problems too. That the French and the English and the provincial government wants a lot of stuff. signs around the cities. The storefronts have got to be in French and stuff like that. But it could be overcome if somebody wants to spend $4 billion and put a bid in for a franchise. This is what I've been saying all along: is that it would be very, very sad if Montreal did not put in a bid for an expansion team. It would be pretty bad if Montreal didn't put a bid in.
Yeah. Okay, Chris, go ahead. You wanted to go, Chris?
Yeah. This is an interesting question for you. Which event would you want to change more for the Expos? Would you want to change Blue Monday, or would you want to change the strike in '94? Like, which one do you think would have affected the Expos more?
I think it would have been more successful if the 1994 season had continued, because they would have made the playoffs and possibly win the World Series. You can't guarantee that a team is going to win the World Series. Like even '94, the Yankees were very good in '94. Kansas City Royals were good. The White Sox.
Mm-hmm.
But '94, if they'd continued that season and settled, the labor negotiations and signed a new contract, that the Expos ownership would have been able to sign some of those players with the playoff revenue, sign some of these guys to long-term deals like Ken Hill and Larry Walker and Mike H. Grissom and John Wetland. And they would have been a mini dynasty that would have played out for a few years going into the late 1990s.
Yeah, it's sometimes I look at these stat places online, right? And this is something that drives me crazy, and I think Chris saw it too. Sometimes when you look up a player, like say I'm going to look up Gary Carter, his stats. Do you believe that they don't put Montreal, they put Washington in the stats? Chris, you've seen that, right?
Really? Instead of the Expos?
Yes, it drives me crazy. I'll send you something later. It's ridiculous.
I can't stand that. I mean, it's disrespectful toward the Expos and Montreal to have Washington, because that's where the team was sent. Sometimes these websites, they want to put WASH.
Yep.
It's crazy.
It is. It's that drives me crazy when I see that. When I'm looking at.
I know
stats.
Baseball Reference doesn't have it. They still have the Expos.
But there's other ones. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you later, Chris.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. The next book I want to read right now. I'm reading John DeQuisto's book Fastball John, which is excellent. But when I'm done with that, I want to read your book Explosion. Can you tell me about that? A little about that? I read a little about the headlines of it. Could you tell me about that book and your work on that book?
Yeah, that's the book that came out in 2024. It's my investigative report on the final days and final weeks of the Expos in 2004. I made a thorough effort to try to get into why and how the Expos were sent to Washington. There were other cities under consideration, but I talked to a lot of people who were underneath Bud Selig. Bud Selig didn't want to do an interview for this book, but he did help me in other books for interview. But I talked to other people who worked underneath Bud Selig in New York to find out, it's basically what we were talking about earlier, the financial problems of the Expos, and there's very few fans showing up 2002 to 2004. They couldn't find a majority owner to take over the team from Jeffrey Loria. Jeffrey Loria had sold the team to Major League Baseball. So for 3 years, Major League Baseball was running the team, and then that's really a good part of the start of the book, was to try to find out more details about how the Expos ended up in Washington. They the official deal or announcement was made September 29, 2004. But the night before is when the rumors started coming out on radio in Montreal that the team was indeed leaving Montreal.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in it, and I think that's going to be the next book that I read. Besides Rusty Staub, Danny, are there any other players who played for Montreal that you feel deserve to be in the Hall of Fame but are not in the Hall of Fame?
Oh boy, that's a tough question. I can't really think of anybody, Rob.
Okay, now that's fine. And Joe Dell put something up about Geddy Lee. You know, that would be Geddy Lee is a big baseball fan, right? That would be great if he could invest some money into a Montreal franchise.
There you go.
Yeah, it's interesting. I tried Geddy. This is for a couple of books ago. To try to get him to talk about the Expo. He's a fairly good friend of Warren Cromartie, the former Expo.
Yes.
From the 70s and 80s. But I could never get Geddy to the phone. But he's got a great baseball collection of baseballs and bats and balls, and uniforms. And most certainly he is a great fan of the Expos and the Blue Jays.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned Warren Cromartie because I actually reached out to him a couple of days ago. I'm waiting to hear back from him. I would love to have get him on the show. So I'm waiting to hear back from him. But it's just funny that you mentioned him.
Yeah, I can help you out on that. It's interesting. Warren had spinal cord surgery a couple of years ago, and he's still learning to walk.
Oh wow!
In these next 2 years, he's still learning to walk right now because he's partially paralyzed. But and he always tells me that he's trying to get Japanese investors involved with the Expos. But you never know; might help out.
Yeah, we'd definitely love to talk to him or anybody who played for the Expos because we haven't had anyone who played for the Expos on. All right, I have a couple of quick things I wanted to ask you. Jarry Park, how was that as a ballpark? I remember watching games there as a kid, whenever the Mets went into Montreal. But how was that? Was that more of a minor league park?
I think so. With the attendance figures are no more than about 29. It holds about 29,000 people. But it was the ideal park for the Expos in the early years because the fans could be really, really close to the players, and it was people loved it. They could really see everything up close. They loved the Expos. Even though they weren't very good for many years, it was certainly a good ballpark until they went into Olympic Stadium. See, Jarry Park, that's the kind of stadium, if they had it downtown and it had it about 35,000 seats, that's the ideal park I think they would like to have. It's a smaller ballpark, but much smaller than Olympic Stadium. Olympic Stadium is too big.
Yeah, and it didn't feel right as a ballpark. I mean, I know it was built for the Olympics, obviously, but I don't know. They definitely would need a new stadium, something that would hold maybe about 43,000 around there. I think. But I honestly think that one of the franchises will probably go to Nashville, and the other one, I'm not sure. But I that's what I think. I think Nashville might get a franchise.
Yeah, I think that the Nashville, Portland, Charlotte, North Carolina, the Oakland is going to Las Vegas, I guess, in a couple of years.
Yes.
But I think that, I think Montreal, I'm on the committee. I think we're underdogs, but we're going to continue to plug away and we'll see what happens.
No, listen, that's great. I give you credit for doing that. And I mean, you never know what could happen.
Yeah. So we have some, I can't say what is going on, but we have an announcement regarding baseball in Montreal in March or April. But we're keeping a lot of stuff close to the vest.
Oh, great.
It has, we were talking to a lot of people trying to get them involved. And there's some things I have to keep confidential.
Okay.
Danny, do you think Montreal's the only chance for Canada to get another Major League Baseball team? Or do you think if Montreal doesn't work out down the road, maybe Vancouver or another city will get one?
Well, Rob Manfred, in an interview, a few months ago with Sportsnet in Toronto around the time of the World Series, he even mentioned Vancouver, but I don't know of any investors interested in Vancouver. I think Vancouver may be too small. It's I don't know. It has a covered roof like Olympic Stadium. It would have to be reconfigured to have baseball play there again. Because Olympic Stadium and the BC Place Stadium, the baseball part of it has been taken out of it. But they say that it could be reconfigured in a baseball diamond again, But the people who have run the minor league baseball team in Vancouver, BC, the Vancouver Canadians, they used to or still own the A&W hamburger chain in Canada, and I guess they say they're not interested in any major league team, but I haven't heard much about any Vancouver investors. But you're right, Vancouver, Chris, is the other possibility in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, listen, this hour has flown by. I love talking. We love talking baseball with you, Danny, and talking about the Montreal Expos. One of my teams, rival teams. When I was a kid. All the great players that played for the Expos. We really appreciate when you come on and talk about it. You know so much about the Expos. I mean, no one, like I said when we opened, Chris, no one knows more about the Montreal Expos than Danny does.
No, he's definitely the guy. And Danny, just want to say thank you for coming on again and just sharing all these great Montreal Expo baseball stories with us, and obviously the new book coming out, the tragic story of Willie Davis and Other Expo Vignettes. And you can pre-order it on Amazon right now. And also that QR code we got up there in the top left-hand corner, just take a picture of that with your phone and it'll take you directly to it, and you could pre-order the book.
Yeah. So
guys, it's always a pleasure talking to you guys because it relives memories of the Expos and talking about the great characters that played for the team.
Yeah, we love talking to you about the Expos. All right, real quick announcement about our schedule. We will not be on Friday night, but we will be on Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. I'm not sure if we're going to have a guest or if you're going to be stuck with just me and Chris. I'm working on something, but no show on Friday night. But next Friday night, a week from this Friday night, we have former Mets pitcher Pete Falcone coming on at 9 p.m. That's January 23rd. And he's going to talk about his upcoming book. So that's the 23rd. And, don't miss out on Pete. That's going to be a good show. Once again, thanks, Danny. We're back Thursday, 3 p.m. Thanks, everybody out there. And we'll catch you. See you then, Chris.
Take care, guys.